Let me give you another example of nested arrays. This will be a shopping list. So inside this array, we're going to have another array, and we're going to have items. Cereal, how many boxes? 3 boxes. We also need some milk. Let's get 2 cartons of milk. Let's get some bananas. 3 bunches of 3 bananas. We'll also get some juice. 2 containers of juice. And finally, we will get some eggs. We'll get 12 eggs. And now we've created an array of arrays, which is our shopping list. Functions allow us to create reusable code in JavaScript. This is how a function is set up. We have the word function, then we have the function name. There's always parentheses here, and you can pass information into the parentheses. We'll talk about that later. And then we have these curly brackets. So this is the opening curly bracket, and then we have the closing curly bracket. And everything inside the curly bracket is run anytime the function is called or invoked. So here the function is being called by just putting the function name with parentheses after the name. So every time this function is called just like this, the console is going to say, "Hey world." So if we load the console right now, you can see it says, "Hey world." And if I just copy this and paste it a few times, we'll see that it's going to say, "Hey world, hey world, hey world" in the console. Since we have run the function 3 times, we see the words "Hey world" 3 times. So now I'm going to create my own function that's going to be very similar. So we'll do function reusable function. And this time it's going to say something slightly different. It's going to say, "Hi world" instead of "Hey world." And now I can call the function down here just like this, reusable function. Oh, forgot to put the parentheses. That's important. And now you see "Hey world" and "Hi world" in the console. Parameters are variables that act as placeholders for the values that are to be input to a function when it is called. So we have defined a function right here called our function with args, and inside the parentheses we see the letters A and B. Now these can be any name. We could call these anything, not just A and B. They could really be any words up here, and that means that when this function is called, we're going to pass data into the function or input data into the function. So you can see the example here where we're calling the function, and instead of saying A and B in the parentheses, we're actually passing the values 10 and 5. So when the function runs, it can use the information that's passed into the function. So in this case, it says console.log A minus B. Well, that's going to be 10 minus 5 because the numbers 10 and 5 have been passed into the function, and that's going to output 5. So I'm going to create a function that's very similar to that function. This one is going to be called function with args, and it's also going to accept an A and B, but we could call that anything we want. And inside, instead of subtracting A minus B, we're going to do A plus B. Now, I'm just going to call this function with args, and I'll pass in 10 and 5, and let's see what that looks like in the console. So first, it outputted 5 for this one, Then it outputted 10 for this one. Scope refers to the visibility of variables. Variables which are defined outside of a function block have global scope. Global scope means they can be seen everywhere in your JavaScript code. For instance, I'm going to declare a variable right here called myGlobal. I'll set it to 10. Now, since this is set outside of a function, we can see it anywhere in the whole code, even in this function right here called fun2. We can see that we reference it here, and we're going to be able to see it. Now, this is an if statement, which we will talk more about later, but we're checking if the type of my global does not equal undefined. So it will not equal undefined if it has been defined and the program knows about the variable. Since this is global scope, it does not equal undefined. It equals 10. The program knows about the variable because this is in global scope. So since this function can access the my global variable, we'll run what's in this if statement where we just add to this output variable my global, and then we put with the value of my global, which is 10. Now here's another example where we're going to see if the type of oops global equals undefined. Well, we're going to set that here. So it is possible to set a variable without using the var keyword. So I'm going to set this to oops global equals 5. So you can see here that there is no var keyword. So normally, if you do use a var keyword, since this is within a function, it will be scoped to that function. If we had the var keyword here, this would be scoped to this function, so you would not be able to see it in this function. However, since we forgot to put the var keyword in this example, there's no var keyword, it becomes global automatically. That means you can access it anywhere else in the program, including here. So if we put the var keyword, then oops global would equal undefined, and then we would never have this line in the output. However, since we did not put the var keyword, oops global equals 5, and this will be added to the output. Oops global and then the colon 5. So when we console.log the output, it's going to say my global 10, oops global 5. Now, actually, it's not going to say that because this is in Scrimba, and in Scrimba, it's more careful and just enforces the fact that you have to use a var keyword. But if we were in our browser, it would not enforce the var keyword, and then it would actually show my global 10, oops global 5. If this was a little complicated, don't worry about that because a lot of these concepts we'll be going over again later with additional examples. Variables which are declared within a function as well as the function parameters have local scope. That means they're only visible from within the function. Let me show you what I mean. If I declare a variable right here, my var equals 5. So we've declared this variable inside a function. So this variable, my var, is only visible inside the function. So it says console.log my var, it should console.log the 5. So we're going to call the function here, and it's going to console.log my var, but then the program is going to run this console.log that's outside of the function. It's still going to try to access my var. And so let's see what happens. You can see in the console that first there's a 5 because it console.log within the function. Then there's an error. because it tried to access my var outside of the function. So really, we just need to delete this where we try to access the variable outside the function. And now there is no error. It is possible to have both local and global variables with the same name. When you do this, the local variable takes precedence over the global variable. Let me show you an example. Here we have a function called myOutfit that's going to return outerwear. That's this variable up here. This is a global variable because it is declared outside of the function. So when we console.log the output of the myOutfit function, or the myOutfit function is going to return outerwear, which is the word t-shirt. So let's check the console and you can see, yep, t-shirt is there. However, let's change this up a bit. So we have some space here because I'm going to put var outerwear equals sweater. So now, if I run this program, you can see in the console, it's going to say sweater instead of t-shirt. It's because this local variable outerwear took precedence over the global variable. Another interesting thing about this, if I do console.log and I console.log the outerwear variable, we'll see that it's still t-shirt. So first, you see in the console it says sweater and t-shirt. So first we console.log this function, which is sweater, it returns sweater, and then we console.log the global variable, which is t-shirt. You can return a value from a function with this return statement. So we have this function here, and we are passing a number into it, the num, and then it's going to return whatever's after the return keyword, in this case, num minus 7. So here, we're going to console.log the function, and it returns the result of minus 7 is this 10 minus 7, which is 3. So it's going to console.log the number 3. If we look in the console, yep, it console.log the number 3 because the function returns 3. Let's try creating another one. This function is going to be called times 5. Again, we'll pass in a number, and it's just going to return something. It's going to return the num times 5. And then just like before, we can test it using a console.log times 5, and we'll pass in the number 5 here. And if I run this, we'll see that it returns number 25. Functions can have return statements, but they don't have to. In this case, this function adds 3 to the sum variable, which is a global variable because it's defined before the function. It does not return anything. So if you don't specify a return value, the return value is just undefined. Now I'm going to create another function that is similar. This one is going to be called add5. And this time, we'll just do sum equals sum plus 5. Or we can shorten this to use the plus equals. So now that's going to add 5 to sum also. But it's not going to return anything. So if we log this out, it would be undefined. It's simple to assign a returned value to a variable. See right here we have the function change. And you pass in a number and it's going to return the result of this mathematical expression. So when we call the function change and pass in the 10, the value that is returned from this function is going to be stored in this variable here. We can do the same thing down here. First we initialize the variable processed, and process arg, it's going to return the result of this mathematical expression. So I can set processed to equal what this function returns. So I can say processed arg, and then I'll just pass in the number 7 here. And now processed equals the result of this mathematical expression. In computer science, a queue is an abstract data structure where items are kept in order. New items can be added to the back of the queue, and old items are taken off from the front of the queue. We're going to simulate that right now, some of the functionality of a queue, using this next in line function. So, the purpose of this is to show that in this next in line function, you can add an item to the array that's passed in, and then it's going to return the first item on the list. For instance, if we have this array right here, if we add an item to this array, it should come after at the end. So it should come after 5, and then it should return the first item on the list. In this case, it's 1. So you see, we have some console.log set up. So it should show what the list looks like, the array looks like beforehand, and then show what it looks like afterwards. This JSON.stringify is just a way to change an array into a string that can easily be printed out to the screen. So to do this, we're just going to have to do two things that we've learned about already. So the first thing is to add the item onto the list. So we see right here, next in line, passed in the test array and 6. So we're calling this function next in line. We're passing in this test array here and the number 6. We want the number 6 to be added to the end of the array. So we'll just do r.push, and then I'll put in num, just like that. Well, actually, it's item. So what we did, we took this array that was passed in here, which is in this case test array, and we pushed the item that was passed in. And in this case here, it's the item 6. Now we want to return the first item on the list. We want to remove and return this item so that when we console.log here, it should show the number 1. So instead of returning item, I'm going to return r.shift. That's what shift does. Shift removes the first item and returns that first item. So let's check this out. Okay, you can see before 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we've popped off the 1, and after it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We did it. Booleans are another data type in JavaScript. There are only two values, true or false. They're basically little on-off switches where true is on and false is off. They don't use quotation marks around the Boolean. See, it just says return false. So this is a function here, it should be indented, where it's just going to return false when you call this function. It could also be true, so we could return true. You can use true and false in more places than just function returns, and we'll be talking more about that later. An if statement is used to make decisions in code. The keyword if tells JavaScript to execute the code in the curly braces under certain conditions defined in the parentheses. So here is a full if statement right here, and there's always parentheses after the keyword if, and here's the condition. So if the stuff inside these parentheses evaluates to true, then the code within these curly braces will be evaluated or run. So in this case, it's a variable. So if the is it true variable is true, it will return yes, it's true. Now, if this is not true, then we'll get to the second return statement, no, it's false. So this whole function here takes in a variable, and we check if that's true or not. So I'm going to make another example just like this, we have another function that hasn't been filled out yet, true or false, and there's a variable that's passed in, was that true? So we'll say if, and then the parentheses, was that true? If that's true, we're going to return something. It will be a string just like before, and the string is yes, that was true. If it's not true, then we'll get to the second return statement in the function, and we'll return a different string. We'll return no, that was false. False. Let me just add some semicolons, and then I can run this, and we'll see what happens. Oh, return needs to be spelled correctly, so let me spell return correctly. So before I run this, I'm going to add a console.log here, so we can console.log the answer. So this is the function call here, true or false. We're passing in true, and then we're going to log what is returned here. Yes, that was true. Since we passed in true, this if statement evaluates to true, and this code is run right here. There are many comparison operators in JavaScript that will return a Boolean of true or false. The most common is the equality operator, and it's often used in an if statement. So here it just says if val. So we have this whole if statement right here. If val, we're going to see if val equals 12. Now to check if it equals 12, we're going to have to use the double equal sign. That is the equality operator, and we'll say if val equals 12. The reason why we can't just use a single equal sign is that a single equal sign is the assignment operator. If we just had a single equal sign, that would mean that we were setting the value of the val variable to equal 12. We're not trying to set this to equal 12. We're trying to check if the value of this variable equals 12, so we have to use the double equal sign. So now this test equal function is going to test to see if the number we pass in is equal to 12. I can do a console.log here, console.log, and then we can see what appears in the console here, not equal, because 10 does not equal 12. We learned about the equality operator, which is the double equal sign. There's also the strict equality operator, the triple equal sign. So here we're checking if 3 equals 3 with the strict equality operator. So the difference is that the equality operator, the double equal sign, attempts to convert both values being compared to a common type, while the strict equality operator does not do the type conversion. So this is going to evaluate to true, the 3 equals 3. But the 3 equals 3 with the string on this side is going to evaluate to false. Both of these would be true if we were using the double equal sign, because the string would be converted to a number and they would be equal to true. But with the triple equal sign, it does not get converted to a number, so it would be evaluated to false, the second one, with the 3 equal signs. So here, we're just going to use it right in this if statement and do equals 7. So now we can pass in the number 7 and it's going to evaluate to true, but if we pass in a string 7, it will evaluate to false. We will do one more review with the equality operator and the strict equality operator. So if I run this here, we'll see in the console it says equal, because it's checking if the number 10 and the string 10 are equal. So if A equals B, the number 10 equals a strict number 10, return equal. Since we're using the equality operator with 2 equal signs, it performs a type conversion, and it converts the string into a number. But if we use the strict equality operator with 3 equal signs, I'll run that again, and you'll see not equal in the console because now it's not converting the types and it's just checking if a number is equal to a string, which is not, so we get not equal. Now I will show you the inequality operator, which is basically the opposite of the equality operator. So I'm going to do the inequality operator with an exclamation point and an equal sign. In this case, I'm going to see if the value is not equal to 99. And again, just like the equality operator, this does type conversion. So let's just run this program and we'll see it is not equal because 10, we passed in 10 into the function here, and 10 is not equal to 99, so we get not equal. The strict inequality operator is basically the opposite of the strict equality operator. And it works like this. So it says if val, I'm going to do if val does not equal 17. So this is the strict inequality operator. Instead of one equal sign, we have two equal signs. And that means it's going to check if this is not true, but it's not going to convert types. So, for instance, if we are checking if the number 3 does not equal the string 3, that would be true. So, in this example, we're just checking if 10 does not equal 17. If we run this, we will see it's not equal. We can also use the greater than operator. So in this function, we're checking if a value is over 100. So I'm going to put greater than 100. And then here, we're checking if a value is over 10. So I'll put greater than 10. So here we call the function, we pass in 10. And if I run that function, you'll see 10 or under because we're not over 100, we're not over 10, or 10 or under because we passed in 10.